When are we going to have a kid? Who do you think is paying for these expensive treatments, you leech?
With that, my husband Michael threw the divorce papers at me.
What's with that defiant look? I've been supporting you. A complete failure. You should be grateful and get out of here. Nobody will want a useless older woman who can't even work or have kids. You'll end up crawling through life in misery.
After 10 years of marriage as a housewife, I was discarded at the age of 40 because of infertility. How am I supposed to go on from here? What saved me from losing the will to live was the precious life growing inside me after the divorce. The smiling face of my angelic son transformed my life completely. I never imagined at the time that this angelic smile would one day drag Michael into the depths of hell. My name is Ashley. I've been married to Michael for 10 years now, and I've been staying home as a full-time housewife since we got married. We have always liked kids and we're looking forward to having our own, but we struggled to conceive. Initially, we were pretty relaxed, thinking that having children happens naturally. However, after 5 years of marriage with no luck, we started to wonder if something was wrong and decided to go for fertility treatments. Unfortunately, Michael had the mindset that fertility treatments were something only women go through, and that the issue of not having children was solely on the woman's side. He wasn't very supportive. On top of that, since the treatments were expensive, he often complained, especially when he saw me feeling unwell from the side effects of the treatments.
I'm not paying all this money just for you to end up bedridden. Who do you think is covering these expensive treatments?
After 5 years of fertility treatments, Michael had clearly reached his breaking point. Despite my doctors and my own best efforts, we couldn't have a child, and the treatment costs just kept piling up. Frustrated by the situation, Michael finally brought up divorce. I tried to talk to him and ask him to reconsider several times, but by then, Michael had already lost his patience with me and wouldn't listen. At 40, I got divorced and was on my own. Although it felt like there was a hole in my heart, I worked hard to survive. I had been working part-time during our marriage to help with the high cost of treatments, so I was able to continue my job. Thankfully, after explaining my situation, they increased my hours, and since I had been considered for a full-time position before, they even worked it out so I could become a full-time employee. The days passed quickly as I stayed busy. Then, about a month after the divorce, something happened that would change my life. My best friend from high school and her husband were killed in a car accident. We had shared everything, both happy and sad moments. When I struggled with infertility and went through my divorce, she had always been there to support me and help me through it. At first, I couldn't believe she was gone. It didn't feel real, but when I saw her face at the funeral, it was as if all the color drained from the world. As I was about to leave the venue, feeling like I was in a daze, something suddenly caught my eye. In the corner of the room sat a small figure hunched over. I had seen him a few times before. He must be about elementary school age by now. Had he grown so much without me even noticing? Sitting still and staring at the ground, that small figure was Bill, my late best friend's son. My heart tightened as I watched him sitting there motionless. What will happen to Bill, who's suddenly alone after losing his parents? My best friend and her husband had already lost their own parents, and I remembered her mentioning that they didn't get along well with their remaining relatives. The thought that Bill might be passed around without going made me uneasy, so I stepped forward and offered to take him in. I thought there would be trouble since I was an outsider, suddenly volunteering like that. But surprisingly, they agreed on the condition that I wouldn't ask for help, no matter what. Bill didn't object either and accepted the idea of living with me. Things progressed quickly, and I found myself raising Bill on my own. Life changed completely after that. Each day was like a whirlwind, and I came to truly admire parents everywhere for how difficult raising a child can be. Every day was so busy it made my head spin, but at the same time, it was filled with joy. We occasionally argued, but I gave Bill all the love I could, and he grew up strong and healthy without any significant illnesses or injuries. Nearly 10 years passed after we started living together, and right around the time Bill entered high school, we ran into Michael while grocery shopping one evening. Michael saw Bill standing beside me, looking surprised but somehow amused as he began to speak.
Why do you have such a grown son? Were you cheating on me?
Hey, stop making ridiculous accusations. This child is.
That's what it is, right? He's the kid from your affair. There's no way you'd have a son this old otherwise.
I told you, it's not like that. I never cheated, even now. It's just me and this boy living together. And besides, he's not. Every time I tried to explain, Michael interrupted me. He was always the type to get an idea in his head and not listen to anyone, but his behavior seemed to have gotten worse since then. Michael cut me off again, grinning in his smug, unpleasant way.
Oh, I get it. You got dumped by your affair partner, didn't you? How pitiful. You never worked much, so you must be struggling now, right?
Don't make up things like that. You're being insulting. Michael's smirk didn't fade, and he seemed to enjoy my frustration. Something felt off as I started considering walking away from his insensitive remarks. Why is Michael convinced that Bill is the child of some affair? He knows I couldn't have kids after 5 years of fertility treatments. I voiced my thoughts. Michael, why do you think Bill is my child? You know I was infertile. Why would you assume he's from some affair?
What? Oh, I don't know. Just seemed like a coincidence.
Even if I had cheated, you know I couldn't have children. That's why we got divorced. How could you forget something so important?
Yeah, well, how long has it been since the divorce?
Something was suspicious. Until a moment ago, he'd been looking down at me with disdain. But now he wouldn't even make eye contact. His wandering gaze only deepened my sense of suspicion. Are you hiding something?
I'm not hiding anything.
Really? When I took a step closer, Michael stepped back. I stared at him, and after an awkward silence, he averted his eyes and began to speak in a low voice. What Michael told me was shocking. Apparently, after our divorce, he had learned from a colleague that male infertility is a real possibility. Out of curiosity, he researched it and found out that he fit the symptoms. In other words, Michael was the one with the fertility issue. But since he had been so reluctant about treatment and never participated, we were never able to have a child. So, the reason we couldn't have a child was,
Yeah, it was my fault.
I see.
You must have been laughing at me behind my back, right? That's why you cheated and left me.
What? Michael had started out calm, but as he kept talking, his emotions swelled and his voice grew louder.
You knew that I was the problem, didn't you? That's why you found someone else.
Wait a minute. Bill is my best friend's son. She died in a car accident, and I took him in as my adopted child.
Shut up. That's a lie. You've always been easy, flirting with any man around. You cheated and left me, you heartless woman.
No matter how much I tried to explain, Michael refused to listen. His voice grew louder, and his words became increasingly insulting, making me feel uncomfortable as I noticed the eyes of people around us. As Michael continued his rant, I was trying to think of how to calm him down when Bill, who had been silently observing everything next to me, finally spoke up.
Michael, stop saying these things about my mom.
What?
If you keep insulting her, I'll call the police.
Bill held up his phone and Michael flinched. He glared at Bill with resentment, but didn't say another word. After clicking his tongue in frustration, he walked away. Thanks, Bill.
No problem. Just call me if anything like this happens again. That guy doesn't seem capable of having a normal conversation, and it's dangerous for you to deal with him alone.
But,
No buts. It's dangerous.
okay, I can't believe Bill, who used to be so small, is now protecting me. I'd always thought of him as a child, but Bill had grown so much without me noticing, and I felt deeply moved. A few more years passed after that. Bill, who had been in high school, was about to graduate from college and was in the middle of job hunting. That day, we had planned to have dinner together after one of Bill's interviews. The interview ran longer than expected, so I waited for him at our meeting place when Michael appeared before me.
Hey, Ashley.
Michael. He had the same smug, unpleasant grin as before. However, his clothes were far more tattered than before, and his shoes had holes. I wouldn't have recognized him as Michael if he hadn't spoken to me. Stunned by the various surprises, I stood speechless as Michael staggered toward me.
Hey, Ashley, why don't we get married again and live together?
What?
Yeah, let's do it. Come on, let's live together.
I couldn't comprehend what Michael was saying and stood frozen. Michael kept getting closer and closer. Michael's hand touched my shoulder, and startled, I stepped back, bumping into someone with a thud. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. But are you all right?
The older man seemed concerned as he glanced at me and Michael, sensing something strange. Just as the man looked about to say something to Michael, a voice cut through the tension.
Hey, stay away from my mom.
Bill had just arrived at our meeting spot and quickly stepped between Michael and me.
Oh, perfect timing. You should know I will be your father again, so you'd better start supporting me too. Got it?
What?
What are you talking about?
Someone like you, abandoned by your parents and raised by someone else, isn't going to amount to much. No way you'll get into a good company. You're destined to be a loser. If you're going to live in poverty and misery, the least you can do is take care of your father and show some gratitude.
Stop talking nonsense. I've put up with a lot, but insulting Bill like this, anger clouded my vision. Why does Michael get to say such cruel things when he knows nothing about Bill? Frustration boiled up and I clenched my fists. Bill looked angry too, but given the sensitive nature of his job search, those words might have hurt him deeply. He was biting his lip in frustration. Just as I glared at Michael, thinking I had to protect Bill, the man quietly observing the situation finally spoke calmly.
If I may, this young man has already been accepted into our company. In fact, his acceptance letter should be arriving today.
What?
What? What are you talking about, older man? This has nothing to do with you, so butt out.
It has everything to do with me. In fact, I might be more connected to Bill than you are. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Robert.
With that, Robert pulled out a business card. In disbelief, Michael took the card and kept glancing between Robert and the card, checking it repeatedly. When Bill and I received the same card, we noticed it had the title President and CEO. This was the same company that Bill had applied to as his first choice. Bill and I were too stunned to say anything, and Robert continued speaking in the same gentle tone.
I was a friend of Bill's biological father. We often hung out a lot, and I often visited their home. Bill was too young to remember, but we played together many times. I had heard that after his parents passed away, he was taken in by a friend of his mother's. I'm glad he's been living with such a wonderful person. I see so much of my friend's kindness and sense of justice in his appearance and character.
Everyone listened in silence as Robert spoke. He looked at Bill affectionately, but when he turned his gaze to Michael, his tone shifted to firm authority.
Bill has grown up to be an admirable young man, raised by his late parents and her. But what about you? Here you are, insulting people in public. Before you criticize him, you might want to take a good look in the mirror.
Shut up, old man. Who do you think you are running your mouth?
Michael's face flushed red as he angrily stepped toward Robert. Just as Michael was about to grab Robert by the collar, another stopped his hand.
All right, Michael, calm down. We'll listen to what you have to say over here.
Startled by the police's sudden appearance, I glanced at Bill, who subtly showed me his phone. When did he manage to call them? Though this was hardly the time, I couldn't help but feel a tightness in my chest, realizing that Bill, who I thought I was protecting, had already grown into a capable adult, protecting me instead. He's not a child who needs to be protected anymore.
Mom, are you okay?
Bill peered into my face, and I looked back at him, filled with pride and melancholy. I'm fine, thank you. When I told him that, Bill's tense expression finally softened with relief. After that, Michael thrashed around for a bit, but once the police restrained him, he gave in and was led away, his head hung low. Since then, I have yet to see Michael again. From what I've heard, Michael remarried a much younger woman after our divorce, but when they couldn't have children, she pressured him, and he was finally forced to admit his infertility. The woman, furious that he had kept this from her, divorced him. To make matters worse, her complaints became gossip at work, making it difficult for Michael to stay there. He eventually left the company, but due to his age, he struggled to find a new job and barely scraped by with part-time work. That's how he ran into me, leading to the incident. I don't know where he is now, but I hope he never crosses paths with Bill or me again. I've consulted with the police and taken precautions, so we'll be fine. Bill and I are still living happily together. After the whole ordeal, Bill successfully landed a job, and though he's struggling with the challenges of his new career, he heads off to work every day with determination, eager to become fully independent. After that day, I unexpectedly found myself smitten with Robert, the man who had helped us. I invited him to dinner to thank him, and we had a great time. Since we're bought, Bill listens to my stories about this new romance with exasperation and amusement, even giving me advice. He's genuinely a wonderful son. When I divorced Michael over infertility, I never imagined my future would turn out like this. Life is full of surprises,